Hi, I'm here with Scott at our local game store, and I'm going to have him tell you his origin story.
So, as you stated, my name is Scott Schaefer. I'm the owner of Deals and Dragons. We've been operating this local game store here in Platteville, Wisconsin for 8 years now, and everything seems to be going very well. The main reason as to why we started in the first place was trying to give people an accessible community where they could enjoy the hobbies in the full array. So the things we represent are various RPGs, all the TCGs that are out in the industry, being Bandai, Wizards of the Coast, Pokemon, making sure that we're covering all of our bases there, and then bringing into the miniature side with things like Warhammer, honestly, the hobbyist industry as a whole, painting, everything like that as well. There wasn't really a good option in our city at the time because we are in rural Wisconsin, and at the time of my graduation of college, I was kind of thinking, well, I could try to go pursue something with my degree, which is a background in forensic investigation with my minor in psychology, or I could kind of work towards building a little bit of a community center here in Platteville. So I ultimately decided to give it a 1 year risk. My wife was fully supportive of it. She said, go for it. I think you'll be able to get it done. And I told her after 1 year, if we can't at least hit our break even point, that we would close it up and I would go back to work in corporate and kind of see where I could go from there. She knew I wasn't really a big fan of my corporate job at the time, so she wanted me to try to pursue my dream. That was the number one biggest thing, first off, was to have a spouse who was supportive of a business endeavor that was really, really risky. So we moved forward with the plan. We started out in a really small incubation point. We were paying like $600 a month in rent, which nowadays is basically unheard of. But I wanted to keep the overhead as low as possible to minimize the risk because I was straight out of college. So I had all my student loan debt and everything else while we went into it as well. My wife was really the only person who supported me at that time. My in-laws and my parents were like, it's really risky. And it's not that they didn't think I could do it. It's that they weren't sure that I was going to be able to make a full career out of what I was getting into. And so that put a lot of pressure on me to make sure that I got it done correctly. That brought a lot of challenges to my family, being, I wasn't taking a paycheck from the store at the time it was about 3 years before I took my first paycheck from the store. I took a little bit of money out just for baseline expenses for my family when we really, really needed it. But for the most part, it was just my wife solo supporting us. I worked a lot of hours. I think if I was with anybody else that wasn't her, I probably would have never been married because I was working 80 hours a week. She was doing the 7:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock hours, but I was working about 10:30 to 11 a.m. every morning till about 10 o'clock at night, and I was doing that 7 days a week. That was a big burnout factor in the first year where we kind of ran into a lot of problems where I realized I was just exhausted all the time. It wasn't really helping grow the business during low traffic hours, but it was about creating and establishing inventory. During that time, I kind of started to figure out where my schedule was after the first year. We decided to be closed on Thursdays because we were kind of competing with the other nightly activities that were going on around Thursdays. We have local trivia, karaoke in the town around Thursdays. So we were like, maybe it's not worth competing at that time. Give me a day off and kind of get a chance to recharge my batteries there, spend time with my wife, and, get a little bit of my life back. That went well. We ended up slimming our hours down, so we open up at 1 p.m. now. We realized that between 11 and noon, we really weren't seeing a lot of foot traffic, so we didn't end up in a timeline where there was a lot of pressure. But it made it so that way I was able to work almost a normal job at that point. The difficulty still kind of continued, though. I mean, she was working 7:30 in the morning to 4:30 p.m., and you'll notice that there's a big overlap there where I go to work at 1 p.m. and I get home at 10 p.m. She's usually going to bed about 10:30, so we would spend about a half an hour to an hour together, and then she would go to bed for the day. Anybody who has a spouse that's on like a shift differential will kind of understand how that works. But she supported me through it all, and that was the biggest driving factor for me to keep going forward. When I first started, I was able to get friends and family to loan me some money, which I've paid back. Everybody says you really shouldn't start this industry with less than $50,000 to $100,000, but straight out of college, I didn't have that. But I was going to make it work either way. So we got $12,000 to get started, and we've been doing it ever since. So we've been open for 8 years, and it seems to be going well. This was a straight out of college endeavor for me. Very risky, but it was what I really wanted to do, and I wanted to make sure that the community that I loved had a chance to represent in the city that honestly I liked living in. Our town's rural. There's about 12 to 13,000 people in it, with a campus that's about 9 to 10,000 people as well. So our demographic was pretty small when we first started. One of the biggest driving factors of positive growth that we saw was the university is a science, engineering, mathematics campus. So while there's only 9,000 people on the campus, the demographic is very rich in people who are interested in our hobbies. And that was something that we looked at pretty deep before we went into it. Realistically, I'm very happy with the way that everything's gone. We've moved locations twice, which was a chore both times, but we were able to buy our building recently and develop it out to try to become WPN Premium. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's the premium factor that Wizards of the Coast has to put you in the top bracket of stores, where they like to represent you and work well with you to make sure that you have a good footprint in the industry. This year, one of my friends who was a recent graduate software engineer helped me put together a website and get into the e-commerce section, which has really helped grow out the business as well. Getting more of an online foot presence for both buying and selling our singles, and having a more organic field for ourselves rather than just going through TCG Player or eBay and having your own options that are out there. For anybody who's interested in opening up one of these, I will be blatantly honest with a lot of people. I would not recommend it for most. It is very stressful. It will consume a large portion of your life. It becomes everything you eat, sleep, breathe it, and it becomes very stressful, and there's a huge burnout factor. There is specific people who have a great time doing something like this and make very successful careers out of it. I won't lie to anybody and say that you can't do it. I will just say it is a lot of pressure. The one thing that I will say is if you're going to get into doing something like this, I highly recommend getting somebody to mentor you. I was lucky enough to get a chance to meet 2 owners who had been in the industry for a very long time, and they told me a lot of things that were good for me to know and learn, so that way I didn't have to make the same mistakes they made when they were first starting. In this industry, it's all about, customer service, customer loyalty. The people who come back to you day in and day out, not only are they great to spend time with, they are also the main support of your entire business. They tell their friends. You have people who come down here and play. We host events every single night of the week, so that way we can make sure that people are basically having a good time, whether it's various different Magic formats or the One Piece format or the miniatures games, D&D on the weekends. It's a good time here. The big thing from my origin that I could tell somebody to kind of learn from is make sure you get a good accountant. Look at maybe a strong lawyer. We've gone through various different things in the past now that I wish I would have right off the start just been like, I have these people that I know that I can rely on if I have any issues. Most people can learn how to handle the other things, whether it's sorting inventory or creating a website or finding somebody to create a website. But when it comes to the bookkeeping and the legal stuff, that really requires a specialty person to do it. The big thing that I will say is without my community, especially because we went through COVID, I don't think we would still be here. We had people who checked in on us even during times where we were closed down in Wisconsin for 8 weeks here. I had people who were checking in on me and my wife just being like, hey, do you guys have supplies? We know that you guys don't have, essentially no job at that time. And there was a very big time of uncertainty. So it was nice to know that my community cared enough about me as a person and not just the place that they played. And I think for me, when we came out of COVID and bought this building and decided we were going to become WPN, for me, the biggest reason was I wanted to give our community the best possible space we could create for them to play the games that they love.
So what do you see in your future then?
The future becomes something, it's a bit of a question mark right now. The industry is definitely changing. I think to nobody's surprise, we see that TCGs are on a huge surge right now. Pokemon's very, very strong. One Piece is one of the most desirable games out on the market right now. Magic just reported that they're the $1 billion subsect of CEO, or a subsect of Hasbro. And to me, that means that the future looks bright. There's a lot of people out in the industry that are interested in these hobbies, and they become more and more mainstream every day. But what do we see in the future? I mean, we'd love to finish up we like short-term and long-term goals. Short-term, we'd like to finish up our WPN Premium. And then long-term, we'd like to become, a mainstay staple of shipping domestically around the United States, having a strong e-commerce footprint, and ultimately possibly expanding out to another location to give another city that we think needs a good community space to have a good community space moving forward.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.